welcome to the Redefine Podcast. Okay, happy podcast day to you. Welcome to the show, if you're brand new. And of course, if you're an existing listener, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Just real quick, if you haven't yet subscribed or followed the show, go ahead and hit that subscribe button on the YouTube and hit that plus button on whatever podcast app you happen to be listening on. And of course, what would really help us here on the show is for those of you who are Apple podcast listeners, I would love a rate and review. Again, it would really, really help us here on the show, expand the show and grow it to more audiences, right? All right. So, yeah. And also too, I mean, you just want to follow because there's a new episode every Tuesday and Wednesday and going strong after 2 years. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. The last episode, we did a retrospective. I'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, I love doing this. It is another, well, beyond my passion and desire to share these principles and these ideas with you, it's a creative outlet, right? It's a creative outlet. I don't have a lot of those at the moment. And so keeping up with this podcast allows me to tap into some of my creative side, right? And so I'm going to continue to do this as long as I possibly can. So make sure you subscribe. Now, as far as our 2-year anniversary, we did a retrospective. And something that I want to share with you that I think is important is, retrospectives, just that. Taking stock, taking a look back. Progress is it's sometimes hard to feel or see in the moment, right? Because when we're in the here and now, that's all we have, the here and now, right? And so I encourage you to periodically take a look back and take stock, right? Take a look back at where you were 12 months ago. Take a look back at where you were 24 months ago, or whatever time period, and compare it to where you are now and see what progress you've made. And again, if you've been on a growth journey, if you've set some goals and you've been working towards those goals, you may not be there yet, or you may not have achieved those things yet, but I guarantee you, if you take that retrospective, you take that look back, you will see that progress has been made. You can only see progress in hindsight, and that's why I love doing retrospectives. That said, it's all relative, right? It's relative to where you are now versus where you were before, right? And at the end of last episode, I talked about a little bit about relativity, right? Like you can't, there's no such thing as stagnation, really. There's no such thing as keep doing the same thing and will equal stagnation. It actually equals regression, because relative to the rest of the world that is moving forward, you are actually regressing, right? You are actually regressing. So there's no such thing as standing still. The analogy that I like is if you're in a parked car on the side of the road, to you might be standing still, obviously. I mean, if your car's broke down, you got a flat tire, whatever, you're not moving at all. However, to the other drivers that are passing you in the other cars, in the other vehicles, you're actually regressing, because you are where they were moments ago. You are where they were in the past. And so to go back to where that is to regress. So relative to them, you are actually regressing. And so that, I think it's a really, really important principle to think about. I mean, relativity is what our conversation is today. It applies to everything. And I've really been into general relativity lately. I'm geeky like that. I'm a nerd. I'm not educated in or I don't have an advanced degree or even I didn't even study physics or anything like that in college, but I have a real strong general interest in it. It fascinates me. And so lately I've been listening to Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and of course he's an astrophysicist. They talk about general relativity a lot in those terms. So for me, I'm like, well, I mean, everything. General relativity applies to everything. As I said, in terms of stagnation and regression in the world moving forward, it's all relative, right? If you feel like you're standing still, you're not. You're regressing, because relative to time, space, and the movement of everyone around you, right? Because you can't stop it. It's moving whether you like it or not. And so I was having a chat conversation with a dear friend of mine, Miss Melanie Banuelos, friend of the podcast, and yeah, I mean, Mel is family at this point. She's part of my chosen family. But yeah, we we were checking in, touching base, and at one point she mentioned, or she said something to the effect of, that some of the best advice I've been given in the past is to only take advice from someone you would change lives with. And that's pretty sound. I mean, that's not bad advice. However, I think that, I said there were some caveats to that. Obviously, that's relative, right? That was the first thing. It's relative. It's relative to you, and it's also your perception, right? So your experience, as far as like, if wanting to change lives with that other person, it's relative to where you feel like your life is right now and where you perceive their life is, right? And so it's really, really important. Again, relativity comes into play. Even if you talk about extreme examples like someone in a war-torn, poverty-stricken, just like impoverished part of the world would, I don't know, conceivably trade places with somebody who is just below the poverty line here in the U.S. Right, right, all relative, or somebody that's is, seems to have all the trappings, material wealth, and luxuries and leisures of life. They might be absolutely miserable, right? They might be completely stressed out, unhealthy, have horrible relationships, and might want to throw it all to the wind and settle for a much simpler life. Who knows? Again, it's all relative. So that's the discussion I wanted to have with you today. Again, time and everything in the world moves forward. So the first piece is that when you're thinking about your own potential stagnation, if you're not setting your goals and you're not putting time and effort into moving forward, understand that it is not, when I say that the rest of the world is moving forward, I don't say that to encourage you to keep pace with the rest of the world, because it's not about that, right? That's the comparison. When you compare where you are and where you think other people are, and trying to keep up, it's just not a healthy way of being, because you're never going to be good enough in your own eyes, right? It doesn't create a healthy mindset. So it's not really about trying to keep pace with the movement of the rest of the world. I think it's really about just trying to, well, understanding that you have to be on a growth journey, and that your journey is your own journey. It's relative to you. There's no other measure other than what you want. Now, of course, use the outside world, use other people to give you ideas and inspiration to for things to kind of aim for and work towards, but do it for you, and not because they're doing it, right? Do it for you because that you think that thing might be something that you want to experience in your life, as opposed to, I just want to get this, and I want to get this, and I want to do that because that's what the rest of the world is doing, right? And that's what this person is doing, that's what this influencer is doing, that's what this guru and expert is doing, right? Yeah, they're good measuring sticks, and really, yeah, good to give you ideas and inspiration, but don't do it just to keep up, right, and to keep pace. We are living our own lives, even in terms of definitions. I think I've said this a few times before in the past. Everything is relative, right? Our definitions of the world around us, of the things around us, of the experiences that we have, even if they're shared experiences, they're not universal, right? They're relative to ourselves, and everybody's going to have a different experience, and so we have to tailor our journeys with that in mind, right? I don't want to get into the astrophysics of it, with time dilation or anything, but time is relative to our own time, our own our own times is relative to our own speed and to our own journeys, right? If you're going as close to the speed of light as possible, your time is relative to you, but to everybody else that's staying on Earth, your time is actually slowed down, right. Faster you go, the slower your time goes relative to everybody else. Anyways, again, all relativity. Understand that your time is in constant motion, right? And it's constant motion. If you're chasing and working towards keeping up and keeping pace with the world, I think just to keep up. I think it can be, again, an empty pursuit and an unfulfilling pursuit. Again, use those things to inspire you, relative to you, right? And what your definition of happiness and success and contentment is only relative to you, and it's only matters to you, not what the world defines, especially when it comes to media. Don't let media and the rest of the world, or even other people, even people that you know who are close to you, define the life that you're trying to create, because that the fulfillment really will only lie in you pursuing the thing that you know is going to be, that you know is for you, and relative to you, and not for anybody else. I mean, again, it goes back to that comparison, right? Right. Yes, everything is relative, but comparing and trying to live up to that relativity, and keep pace with the rest of other people's relativities is foolhardy, and ends up, I think, being a more empty pursuit than not, right? I don't know if that made any sense, but general relativity, and I guess the last piece is, again, our time is always moving forward. So stagnation and keeping with the status quo, and not working towards personal growth, and expanding your own perspective, and expanding your own self awareness, and expanding your own, yeah, just everything, in this journey, being better, having working at shedding those things that have been holding you back, and growing past the things that you need to grow past. If you're not doing that, understand, again, your time is moving forward relative to you, and so, whether or not you feel like, if you feel like you're okay just doing the same thing, understand that your time is moving forward, right? And what I would hate is that, by the end of it, you realize that, well, yeah, that time has run its course, and the ship is about to dock, or land, or whatever analogy, but you know what I mean. Like, the time ends for each and every one of us, relatively, and to not work towards expanding and growing, could potentially lead to, by the end of it, when you are at the end of your time, regret, and unfulfillment, and wishing you had more, right? Wishing you had more. Kind of somber. I didn't mean for this conversation to go somber, but yeah, it is important. It is. I think it's really, really important. I mean, I said that before in the past. It's we get one go. We get one go, and each of our journeys is relative to ourselves, because yeah, I mean, it's all our own journeys, and so we each have a finite amount of time, and I don't know what that is for you, but I would want you, as much as possible. What I wish for you is to live as much of that time, in fulfillment, and experiencing the kind of, having. Oh, no, my wish for you is that you, whatever time you have, that you have the kind of life experience that you want to have, and that makes you content, and that makes you feel fulfilled, right? Okay, that's it. I'm gonna go. Before I get too morose, and too contemplative. But I thank you for tuning in. I wasn't quite sure where this conversation was going to go about relativity, but yeah, our journeys are our own journeys, and nobody else's, and so do the things that you need to do for you, and nobody else. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyways, I was trying to close it out with something cool, but I'm gonna go ahead and let it go, and just leave it lie, because it is off the rails. I always say, I'm gonna go before it goes off the rails, but this one is already off the rails. Thanks for tuning in. More to come, of course. Have a great rest of your week, and have a great weekend. It's getting cooler here in the northern hemisphere. I'm sure it's starting to get warm in the southern hemisphere, or wherever you happen to be listening on this. But enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch you next week with a fresh new one. So until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.